Welcome to the Terrible Podcast with your hosts from SteelersDepot.com, where you can find all your latest and greatest Steelers news. It's Dave Bryan and Alex Kozora, always lit, talking Steelers. And now, here's Dave and Alex.
Welcome to the Terrible Podcast, Season 14, Episode 72. He's Dave Bryan. I'm Alex Kozora, SteelersDepot.com. Thanks for being back with us here this Friday. Steelers Nation getting ready for Week 18, the final week of the 2023 NFL regular season. Hopefully not the Pittsburgh Steelers' final week, but it could be. They'll need some help to get into the postseason race and action and wildcard weekend. Dave, how you doing?
Doing well on this Friday. Exciting weekend coming up. We'll get to watch, obviously, the Steelers play the first game out of the chute on Saturday. And then, depending on how that goes, well, regardless, there is the path that the Steelers couldn't make the playoffs, even if they lose this game. The percentage of that path probably not as likely, but not unthinkable. But if they do win this game, going to be watching a lot of certain games out there. Might even roll all the way into Sunday night, waiting to see the final outcome there. So going to be interesting next few days, to say the least. And we'll see if this team can get it done and get into the postseason. Alex, we might have to do two shows today because one show might take up most of the time going over the Baltimore Ravens injury report.
Yeah, it's a lengthy list, but the position they've been able to find themselves in, because they have essentially nothing to play for in this game. They're resting a lot of their guys, and so we'll talk about that. But you're right, Dave.
Have we ever done a show like that where the Steelers have been on the other side of that? I guess there's been, a couple of Week 17s where the Steelers have been able to sit some guys over the years there, but it seems like it's been a while.
Yeah, I mean, I guess 2020 in that finale, right? That year where they started 11-0, they had, I think, nothing to play for. Rudolph got the mop-up start there in that finale, but it's felt like a while, and this weekend's going to feel like a long one, Dave. As you said, you may not know until game 272, the final one of 2023 in the regular season, whether or not Pittsburgh gets in the playoffs. In simplest terms, if Pittsburgh wins, they need a Jaguars loss to Tennessee or a Bills loss to Miami on Sunday night to get into the playoffs. If they lose, as you mentioned, still, I think, a fairly realistic path to get in. If they lose this game, the Colts and Texans cannot tie. The Jaguars must lose to the Titans, and Denver must beat the Raiders. In simplest terms, those are the most likely scenarios for Pittsburgh. But as you mentioned, Dave, injuries, let's dive right on in. We'll start with Pittsburgh before going to that CVS list that is the Ravens injury report for Pittsburgh. A couple players with game statuses in this one, 3 players questionable. They are safety Minkah Fitzpatrick and his knee, safety Trenton Thompson and his neck/stinger, and linebacker Landon Roberts with his pec. All 3 were limited on Thursday. Fitzpatrick and Roberts returning to practice on Wednesday. They were limited Wednesday and Thursday. Roberts told reporters he will play, so it feels like he will go. Fitzpatrick seems to be the real coin flip wild card in this one, Dave.
Yeah, short week. It was hard to kind of predict which way this thing would go, especially with there being that estimated practice day that Minkah and Landon Roberts were listed, I think, as no practice in that one, but it was only a walkthrough. And look, they could obviously use both those guys back on the field, and Landon says he's going to play. We'll see, obviously, what happens with Minkah Fitzpatrick. You got to think that if he's close, he's going to want to get out there and go. Later today is the cutoff for elevations. One would think that Miles Jack will be back up again, right? And then we'll watch to see what happens with Eric Rowe. And then if Eric Rowe does get elevated, then you have to wonder, who of maybe Trenton Thompson and Minkah might not be active on Saturday there. So, and obviously if Minkah's anywhere close, he would be in uniform. Then you could probably see a guy like Trenton Thompson maybe not be elevated, but Trenton Thompson could potentially give you something on special teams. anyway, I think we'll have a little more clarity by 4:00 this afternoon. But even that clarity might bring us down to will or won't Minkah suit up.
I don't think they'll know that until warmups on Saturday. I'm pretty confident Rowe's going to get called up. He said he worked even first team practice yesterday because Minkah was limited, so not in team sessions. Listen, you could call up and elevate Rowe, and even if Minkah comes out, healthy on Saturday and says I'm perfect, which is not going to happen, but let's assume that for a second. And if you didn't want to dress Rowe, there's no consequence. It's week 18. It's his third elevation. You have unlimited elevations for any playoff game, so you could burn it if you wanted to. So I'm pretty confident they're going to elevate Rowe as a just in case, and I think he's still got a good chance to see some snaps in this game. I think Minkah's going to be a true game time decision.
All right, real quick, what does our other inactives look like? You would think Mitch Trubisky, number 3 for the first time this season, right?
Right. We know Kenny, the number 2, no discussion this week. Pickett is the number 2.
Right. So you would think Mitch Trubisky would be on the inactive list. Dylan Cook would be on the inactive list. Blake Martinez probably on the inactive list if Landon Roberts is back going again. That's 3 right there. Darius Rush would probably not get a helmet again. That's 4. Probably Leal not going to get a helmet again. That's 5. Where am I at 6 and 7 here?
That's a good question. Trying to think it through. Who are some of the other typical inactives that we may have missed here through this process? Thompson, if he can't go, then
one of the safeties probably.
Yeah, so one of Minkah, Thompson, and Rowe. Right,
and then forget who the 7th might be. Looking back, but regardless, that should shape out. The only interesting decision I think, like we just said, would be whether or not Minkah goes, and then, I guess you could say there's a chance Thompson wouldn't go as well.
Right, and Roberts is still technically questionable, although it really sounds so. I assume it'll be Roberts and Miles Jack playing the majority of the snaps in this game.
Right.
And then not practicing on Thursday, just to note, that was Miles Jack for a personal reason, but no game status. He should be available for Saturday. And then same with Isaac Seumalo, who's Dave really battled that shoulder injury. I watched him on tape. This dude is hurting a lot, but he's pushing through, and kudos to him for that.
Oh, you know what? They have had, they've had 2 safeties inactive up until now. So it would still be interesting to find out who that 7th inactive is, because even just this past week, obviously it was Kenny Pickett, Minkah, and Trenton, Darius Rush, Dylan Cook, Landon Roberts, and DeMarvin Leal. So it would probably be Mitch, Darius Rush, Cook, Blake Martinez, DeMarvin Leal, at least one safety, and yeah, it'd be interesting to see how that plays out with the 7th there.
Right, because the 2 safeties were down in part because they weren't healthy.
Right.
If they're healthy, what options will Pittsburgh take? We'll see overall. But I think Rowe will be active in dress, and then Minkah, we'll take it from there, see how he looks in warmups. Going to Baltimore, and speaking of which, a little bit later in the show today, as we always do on Friday, having a Baltimore beat writer, that is our friend Jonas Schaefer, who covers the Ravens for the Baltimore Banner. We'll talk with him a little bit later, get his perspective on this week 18 for the Ravens. Going now to the Ravens injury report, and as you mentioned, David, it is a long list of 5 players officially ruled out. They are wide receiver Odell Beckham Jr., linebacker Malik Harrison, cornerback Marlon Humphrey, quarterback Lamar Jackson. Tyler Huntley will start under center for the Ravens. Defensive back Daryl Worley, and starting guard Kevin Zeitler. In large part, these are due to being able to rest guys and having that 1 seat locked up. We expect others to either not play or play very limited snaps. It does not sound like rookie wide receiver Zay Flowers will suit up in this one. Other guys probably pretty limited: Roquan Smith, Patrick Queen, etc. So it's going to be a bunch of backups for Baltimore in this game.
Yeah, and once again, they signed who was it? Cook, running back.
Dalvin Cook.
Yeah, Dalvin Cook to the practice squad. It'd be interesting to see if he's one of their elevations on later today, if they get him in there and get him a few carries potentially there. They should have, you would think, 55 guys to choose from. How many do you think at a minimum a team in this situation would dress and play? At least 43 guys, you would think?
Something like that. I mean, you only guys like Roquan Smith and Patrick Queen may technically be active and dress, but how much do they play is a different story.
Right. And then you got to figure they'll need some of those offensive linemen dressed and potentially playing some, but that makes this game kind of hard to preview, right? Because you don't know. I mean, look, and we'll get into this in a bit. Offensive scheme wise, they're going to do what they do for the most part. You're not going to change a lot of that up, I would think, in this game. But defensively, how much more vanilla might they make it because of some of the backups being in there, and probably not wanting to show some other stuff on tape potentially there. But more than anything, it'll be interesting to see how long some of those starters that do have to suit up for this game actually play.
And it sounds like Cook is going to be more of a playoff option for them. I don't expect him to play in this game, although I don't know exactly how the running back snaps will look. I think Melvin Gordon's going to see the bulk of the time. I think they're going to be pretty careful with Gus Edwards, and especially after losing Keaton Mitchell earlier this year, they don't want to lose any more running backs. So it's probably more Melvin Gordon, maybe a bit of Justice Hill. Right. But I think Cook's going to be more suiting up for the playoff race.
All right. We'll see how that shakes out later today with their elevations and all, and obviously get into the game and see what they filled out there.
It was award week in Pittsburgh as they handed out the MVP award, which we talked about on Wednesday. T.J. Watt winning that for the fourth time. Also, a couple other ones being handed out since our last show. The Rookie of the Year, the Joe Green Great Performance Award, goes to none other than cornerback Joey Porter Jr. No surprise there. The Chief Award, the player with the best relationship with the media, goes to Patrick Peterson.
Good call. Good call by you there. That was a good call by you.
Thank you. And then I believe this is a national one, I think. So the Bart Starr Award, which goes to, I think, an NFL player that shows the most integrity and just kind of the best professionalism overall, goes to Minkah Fitzpatrick. So kudos to him for that. If I'm getting the details of that award correctly, that just came out a little bit earlier on Friday. Dave, your thoughts on these selections?
Look, we talked about Joey Porter Jr. That seemed like the obvious selection when it came to the Joe Green Award. The Media Award, I think you presented a good case of why it should be Patrick Peterson there. Good for him. And look, this is a guy that, however much longer he plays, once he gets done with football, we're going to see a lot of him on NFL Network or ESPN or one of these shows, right? Because it just seems like he's been, he does the podcast obviously with Bryant McFadden and sharpening his skills that way, same way that Cameron Hayward's been doing that as well. So. And he's always been out front with the media, even dating back to his time with the Cardinals there. So even though it's his first year here in Pittsburgh, probably shouldn't have been all that big of a surprise with him winning the Chief Award there. But good for him. And now, I think at some point, was it during the Rich Eisen show yesterday, he kind of said that he's got one more year in him.
He did confirm he's going to come back in 2024, assuming Pittsburgh wants him. There is that roster bonus due, but I feel very strongly at this point Pittsburgh will be accepting and picking up that roster bonus.
Yeah, how's that? That's going to be interesting. I guess you use him more as a versatile type player at that point. Now that he's shown that he can do some stuff at safety and all like that, and gives you the ability to do some interesting things rotation wise. And I think we even highlighted, the last couple of weeks here that, look, I got to be honest with you, through the first half of the season, I wasn't sure. Patrick Peterson was a slam dunk to return for the 2024 season, but he has played well. I don't know what, last 5 games, something like that. There, and he even talked about he wasn't sure how this move to safety would go, but it's kind of reinvigorated him to some degree. So at this point, and him saying now that he's hedging towards returning or plans to return next season, probably the probability factor would be more in his favor of doing so. unless the Steelers just want to, move on from him.
Right. And I don't see any indication that they want to do that right now, given some of the other, free agency potential losses in Levi Wallace. Not that he's a critical loss, but I just think the versatility, if you lose him, you got to go find someone who can do those things. And third straight, you'd have to find that guy. And it's just too much speculation, too much guesswork there. I don't want to see him get the outside corner reps next year. I think it's a little messy and a little layered about what his role could be next season. I think really kind of being more of a full-time slot corner guy, and then, some rotational type stuff at safety can work. I don't have an exact plan in mind right now. I don't think the team does either. Depends on some other offseason moves they do or don't make. It's a little tricky because he's a free safety type. You have Minkah Fitzpatrick, who of course is your free safety. He can play in the box. He was playing in the box more this year, but obviously ideally he's better out in space and playing the post. But point is, I think there's enough hats that Peterson can wear. He's done a nice job at safety, and he's really come around to that, because he used to be pretty anti-safety, as in I'm not playing safety, otherwise I'm going to just retire, because that just seems to be the conclusion that he had. But he seems to be open to that move now that he's actually played some safety and seems to be enjoying the communication aspect of it. And just frankly, his speed is gone, and so he can't turn and run, and so he's a slot guy. He's a safety type. He can really no longer be a down in, down out outside cornerback.
Look, his base salary next year is $3.85 million. Now, there is that $3 million roster bonus that's due on March 17th. But even added in, you're looking at a guy that would cost you cash-wise, not cap-wise, but cash-wise, $6.85 million. And as we've talked about his leadership, it would be nice to have him in that locker room one more year. For tutelage for Joey Porter Jr. and who knows, obviously this team would hope to get a healthy Corey Trice back next during the offseason there. You could potentially draft another young cornerback as well too. So just from a leadership aspect in that defensive back room, and there's been all this talk this last week as well too about some of the meetings that Patrick Peterson has had with those defensive backs and all as well too. So it's hard to replace leadership like that. And you obviously would hope that a lot of this is rubbing off on a guy like Joey Porter Jr. and probably is setting the tone, even just in one season, in his rookie season. But it sure wouldn't hurt to have Professor Pete, as Joey Porter, called him, around one more season to just kind of reiterate some of the things that are expected of how to be a pro, how to go through the ups and downs, and especially that extra tutelage to whatever new kids come in that room. So once again, you get to the midpoint of this past season, I certainly wasn't thinking it was a slam dunk. I mean, he's been one of those 4 or 5 names that I've thrown out on Twitter every couple of weeks of will he or won't he last past the middle of March. But I think the last 4 or 5 weeks of play and him with the position moving all like that, it's not hard to imagine him lasting past March 17th now.
Right. And the leadership is important, and certainly one reason why you would want him back. But his tape has been solid, too. He had a really tough first month of the season, the Raiders game, took his lumps in that 49ers game, those types of things. But after that, he's played really well. And so, obviously his best days are behind him. We're talking position changes. He's going to be more limited in terms of the role he can play. He really can't play on the outside. You got to find somebody who can do that. But the tape of what he's offering at slot corner, at safety, the versatility, I mean, there's tangible on-field things he's providing in addition to the intangible off-field leadership things he's able to bring to this defense as well.
Yeah, look, your cornerback room is already going to look a little bit different next year. I mean, James Pierre is not a lock to be back next year, right? Because anyway, he's special teams value mostly anyway. Levi Wallace probably not going to come back, right?
Unlikely, and even if he does, we're looking for a longer term, better number 2 type corner.
Yeah, and Chandon Sullivan may have played himself into a little bit better contract elsewhere, right?
It's possible, yes.
Who else do you have in that cornerback room? You got a young kid like Darius Rush, that should be back, or at least in the room. Corey Trice, another young kid that should be back competing. But outside of that, Joey Porter Jr., what do you have in that quarterback room?
Is Luke Barku still on the practice squad, I think, but obviously we're talking future contracts there. So yeah, I mean, you don't have a clear number 2 outside corner next year. I think that's pretty obvious right now and could be high on their list of needs.
Okay, so anyway, good for Patrick Peterson winning that award.
Pro Bowlers, Pittsburgh also getting 3 to Orlando in February for the 2024 Pro Bowl. I don't know if I'd call it the Pro Bowl or the Pro Bowl games.
I think they call it Pro Bowl games now, and
weird
all that kind of stuff. You know what it is? Superstars.
Like the old
Superstars competition here. Oh, you're gonna get me riled up here in this segment. I'm a traditionalist at heart. I remember as a kid, every time the Pro Bowl, because a lot of times you didn't get to see, because where I lived, you didn't get to see Steeler games every week, right? You know, and you know, it was a big deal for me as a kid as a Pro Bowl. I can remember sitting there and laying out all my football cards of the Steelers that were in the Pro Bowl, and obviously in the 70s there was quite a few of them, and all like that. And then obviously the game has, actually they played football during the Pro Bowl and all, like now. I watch the Pro Bowl / Pro Bowl games now pretty much because I have to, in case anybody says something, during an interview or something happens, and, it's more background noise more than anything, especially with what it's come to now with it being games and less about football overall now. I just hate that so much emphasis now is put on the actual selection of it, because look, you got several guys that have made extra money because of Pro Bowl selections. Heck, you have 5th-year option amounts tied to it for these younger players and all like that. And let's face it, it's a popularity contest and has been for quite a few years now. Now go ahead and rattle off the Steelers selections this year, and then let's talk about them.
T.J. Watt, as expected. Miles Killebrew, his first Pro Bowl bid, which is good for him. It's certainly deserved, best punt blocker in football. And then Minkah Fitzpatrick as well, which was curious, obviously, with the injury and the lack of production. Still a great player, but not exactly a Pro Bowl caliber year. And I know it's easy to sit there and say, oh, well, the fans just voted him in because they just know the name. He was not top 10 in the fan voting. So either the coaches or the players had the pull and the sway to get him over the hump there. So right. It's like Watt last year making it over Alex Highsmith. I mean, after his injury plagued season, it's really more reputation based, but frankly, don't blame the fans because they didn't vote the guy in.
True. Good point. Because once again, we get the list of top 10 at positions across the league every week throughout the voting process there. Look, TJ Watt deserving this year. Nobody's going to argue with that. Miles Killebrew, doesn't he lead the NFL in special teams tackles, and then obviously has a couple of blocks this year. So obviously deserving as a special teams guy there for him. Good for him. Like to see that. Minkah's when you get into the gray area there. I mean, let's face it, it's name recognition among the coaches and the players. Now, to Minkah's credit. And and this is the argument for him being in there despite missing all those games. Man, he made a lot of damn tackles before going down injured, and you could definitely see the difference of this team with him and without him. And when he is on the field, even though he didn't have any takeaways or anything like that, he was an impactful player. You definitely could use the games missed against him. So I understand why he got in, and I am a huge Minkah fan. But don't let that go by the wayside here. But I can see why that would bother others.
Sure. The only thing is, I'm not sure who he took the spot up. I didn't look at the list of potential names, like who got snubbed. Did somebody in the AFC have a great season? Jesse Bates is now in the NFC, and Simmons made it as the starter over Fitzpatrick. So I don't know if there was some other, like in the NFC, Antoine Winfield Jr. getting snubbed by Budda Baker. That's an obvious miss there. I don't know if that played out as obviously in the AFC. Quick note on T.J. Watt, just briefly. 6 Pro Bowls in his first 7 seasons. Now becomes the 4th Steeler all-time to ever do that. Including him on that list is Marquise Pouncey, Franco Harris, and Joe Green. So what a great list to be a part of there. TJ Watt, 6 Pro Bowls in 7 years, and I assume an All-Pro is going to come his way after the season as well.
I'm not going to sit here and say Minkah should, Minkah.
I'll say it. He shouldn't have gotten in.
I'm going the route of I can understand why people would take issue with it.
Yeah, I mean, just a great player. I'm not mad at Minkah, obviously, but he missed half the year, and he didn't have an interception, and just you don't make the Pro Bowl that year. The Pro Bowl is about what you did that season. It was a lost season in a lot of respects for Minkah. As you said, the tackling was really important, and he's still the second leading tackler on this team right now, which is crazy to think about. They've had the injuries at inside backer as well, but just a little surprising to see his name there.
One guy that got snubbed on the Steelers is one Chris Boswell. I think that's easy to throw out there.
And you talk about reputations, Justin Tucker making it 1 of 5 from 50 plus this year, having one of his worst seasons ever. I think he even has a miss from inside 50, which is very rare for him. At the least somebody other than Tucker should have gotten in, whether that's Butker. To me, Boswell certainly deserving of it. Just have 2 kicker spots. Why only have 1 kicker in punter and long snapper slot? Who cares? Open it up a little bit so more guys can get in.
Yeah, I would agree with that. You knew that was the way this was going to go with that position, though, right?
Yeah. Again, was he first in fan voting? Do we even know where he was? Tucker was in the official fan voting, which makes up 1/3 of the actual selections. It's coaches 1/3, players 1/3, and then fans 1/3 of the voting. I don't know if we have that information on hand right now.
I put that chart in the post there for you. So
in the Pro Bowl.
Yeah, I added that top 10 in there. So if you can look at that real quick.
Okay, I imagine he was probably closer to the top, but I don't have official confirmation on that. So let me try to pull it up here.
Okay, I can pull it up here if my computer will act right here. Let's see here. I thought I put it in there.
Yeah, it's not in the actual selection post, but I don't know.
Okay.
I found it in another one. I know important information. He looks like number 5 on the list, but that's overall in the AFC. Looks like he was 3rd. So that 3rd in the fan voting in the AFC.
Okay. All
right. Anyway, so it's Watt, Killebrew, and Fitzpatrick. Hopefully none of them get to go because they're playing in the Super Bowl, but that seems to be unlikely. Should mention George Pickens unhappy about his Pro Bowl snub. Talking about snubs, he took to Instagram and expressed some language that he was not happy with that. And Matthew Marks, you made a good point. Pickens was unhappy to not be selected in the Pro Bowl last year. And so I appreciate the competitive spirit. We're not having a whole Pickens drama thing here. It's fine. It's just one post. But, the guys that got in over him, Keenan Allen, Jamar Chase, Tyreek Hill, Amari Cooper, they were all more deserving if you look at their production over George Pickens.
Let's see. We've got another week until the All-Pro, right?
Is that when the All-Pro was?
Last year was January 13th.
Okay, so right after the season.
All right. TJ is going to be All-Pro, right? First team All-Pro.
Yes.
Who else?
That may be it. Because Tucker, based on how the voting went, Tucker should not be All-Pro. I don't know how they're going to handle All-Pro for kicker.
But TJ probably. You think Minkah gets All-Pro?
No. I hadn't looked at the list of other safeties, but I don't know how Minkah, who played in 10 games, didn't pick off a pass, gets an All-Pro nod. I just don't know how you get the deserving honor of that.
Nobody on offense, right?
Yeah, nobody on offense.
And so TJ Watt might be the only first team All-Pro.
I mean, I guess it could be Minkah. I mean, maybe he makes second team. Who are the other top AFC safeties? I mean, Simmons should make it. Simmons probably makes it over Minkah as he did for the Pro Bowl. Beyond that, I just hadn't sat down and taken a look at the list again. Jesse Bates is at a conference, and that maybe helps clear a path a little bit overall, but we'll see.
All right.
I mean, Boss could make it. Boss should be an All-Pro to me.
Yeah, he should be.
So we'll let you know. All right, Dave. Anything from any players that have spoken? Not as many interesting comments since our last show. I think Landon Roberts spoke. Miles Killebrew spoke. Maybe some others have spoken with the media. But any comments I'm missing that caught your attention?
I don't think anything earth-shattering caught my eye, unless you've got something you want to discuss that anybody said.
Nope, nothing top of mind right now. It's actually probably a good chance here to take a pause, and we're going to come back with our beat writer of the week. And this week, covering the Ravens is Jonas Schaefer. Please follow him on Twitter at Jonas_Schaefer. That's SHAFFER. Covers the Ravens for the Baltimore Banner. Had him on earlier in the year, bringing him back now. Let's take a pause and come back with Jonas. And welcome back to the Terrible Podcast. And again, as mentioned earlier in the show, have a Baltimore Ravens beat writer for the second time this season, getting you ready for this Week 18 matchup, the season finale. That man is Jonas Schaefer. He covers the Ravens for the Baltimore Banner. You can follow him on Twitter at Jonas_Schaefer. Jonas, thanks so much for being on the show today.
Glad to be back on with you, Alex. How you doing?
Doing really well and really excited for this game. Probably more excitement in Pittsburgh than Baltimore. Baltimore is kind of like, all right, let's get this game done and over with and get ready to fully focus on the playoffs. But let me start off here with Lamar Jackson, of course, being out of this game, resting him rightfully so. How much will change without Lamar in this game? I know Tyler Huntley is cut from a similar cloth. He's not new to Pittsburgh. He's going to start his fourth game against the Steelers this weekend. It's the same number as Lamar started in his career against the Steelers. But does this schematically, do things change at all, given that some of the stars offensively will either rest or have limited action?
Schematically, I don't think you can afford to make too big of a change. You do wonder about that step down in run threat from Lamar to Tyler Huntley. Like, Huntley wasn't all that dynamic as a runner as he had been in 2019, in 2020, in 2021. I'm not sure if he was dealing with any injuries, but his yards per carry really took a tumble, and it didn't have an effect too dramatically on that running game. I mean, you remember, Alex, just how well the Ravens did with J.K. Dobbins in Pittsburgh last year. We were able to grind out a win without Lamar. I don't know if, in this new era of Todd Monken, they still have that dynamism even with Lamar out of the lineup. But you hope that Tyler Huntley can be at least a little bit more spring loaded as a runner than he was last year, which would definitely help him not just in the design run game, but in the scramble game as well. That could be certainly a factor with the Steelers edge rush. But that also brings me to another point, which I'm really excited to see how it plays out, which is just how much more quickly Tyler Huntley gets rid of the ball compared to Lamar. You look at some of the next gen stat stuff. Lamar is like outside the top 30 in average time to throw. And granted, a lot of that is him, rolling around the pocket, him scrambling, him breaking tackles, making plays, hanging back behind the line of scrimmage as he looks for guys to get open downfield. Tyler Huntley, very small sample size, 10 dropbacks, 9 attempts, average time to throw of, I think, 2.12 seconds, which is a quarter of a second faster than Tua, who is the number one quarterback in the NFL in terms of average time to throw. So you're talking about a exceptionally quick strike, quick trigger passer. Granted, like I said, the small sample size, you don't want to make too much of a big deal of it, but he is a guy who, unlike Lamar, does not typically, get to that second or third read. He does not typically push the ball downfield. Not that he hasn't in his career. His arm strength is clearly not what Lamar's is, but I'm just excited to see his game as kind of a photo negative of Lamar's, because even though they're both athletic guys running the same kind of system, how they actually operate in the pocket, in a lot of ways, could not be more different.
That's a great point. No, it's good information there. No, the news is relatively fresh, but yesterday afternoon, it was announced that Baltimore signing Dalvin Cook. Seems like it's for their playoff run. I assume he's not going to be a factor in this game, but what was the motivation to sign him? Is that in some response to Keaton Mitchell being lost? I know there are different skill sets, Mitchell being that big play kind of guy, but what was the reason and the value of bringing in a Dalvin Cook?
Yeah, I mean, the Ravens haven't commented on it publicly, so I don't want to speak out of turn, but I think it's fair to say that, they're just trying to leave no stone unturned in their pursuit of a Super Bowl title. Melvin Gordon is RB3 right now. He had a solid enough game on Sunday against Miami. But Jake Funk, former Maryland guy, is the practice squad running back, hasn't been elevated to a game yet. I guess the thought is, if these guys who are signing for the playoffs don't count against the salary cap, then you might as well just take a gamble on a guy like Dalvin Cook. Personally, I don't see him being, maybe even all that much better than Melvin Gordon. His stats are terrible this year. His rushing yards over expectation have fallen every single year now for I think 4 straight seasons. He just doesn't have the same juice that he did when he was at Minnesota. And I know he's a year or so removed from a 1,000 plus yard season with the Vikings, but still, I'm pretty down on what he could be in terms of an improvement over any of those guys in the Ravens rotation. But that Jet situation was pretty toxic. One of the worst offensive lines in the NFL, one of the worst run blocking units in the NFL. You come to Baltimore, maybe you get a little bit more juice in the tank.
Besides Lamar, I've not yet heard Harbaugh comment on anybody else who's going to sit other than the final injury report. Beyond those 2 elements, is there anybody else you expect to either not play in this game, as in not dress, or have their snap count severely curtailed? Guys like Roquan Smith, Patrick Queen, Kyle Hamilton, Zeitler, etc. Can you give us a perspective on some other guys that may not go in this one?
Yeah, on offense, I'll be curious to see what they do at the tackle situation. Ronnie Stanley at left tackle, Morgan Moses at right tackle, both had a pretty solid game on Sunday against a very, very fierce Miami pass rush. But, Ronnie has dealt with knee and ankle injuries this season that have limited him from, being the guy that he used to be. I mean, I'm sure Steelers fans will remember it was a game against the Steelers where he first hurt that ankle 1 week after signing that huge extension when he was probably one of the best 2 or 3 tackles in the NFL. He's still kind of trying to put himself in a position where he can be at close to full strength of the playoffs. So I imagine the Ravens won't throw him out there for, anywhere close to 50, 60, 70 snaps. Same thing with Morgan Moses. He's dealt with shoulder/pec stuff this year. You would imagine that they would want to get some of those younger guys, give them some looks out wide, and trust that with Tyler Huntley's quick release, it might not make too much of an issue with Watt and Highsmith coming off the edge. Zay Flowers doubtful for this game. I doubt we see him line up as they kind of let that calf get fully healthy. Kevin Zeitler already ruled out at right guard. Tyler Linderbaum, Pro Bowl center. I'm curious to see just how much he plays, because I think you do want that guy in the middle handling all the pre-snap protections for your quarterback. But also he's such an important part of what they do. Do you play him for more than a half, more than 3/4? TBD. And then on defense, I think we'll probably see a more equitable distribution of snaps so that, guys like Justin Madubuike, Michael Pierce do not play as much as they have been. They're not anywhere close to, some of the 80%, 90% snap shares that you see some defensive linemen around the NFL get, but you obviously want those guys pretty well rested for the playoffs. At linebacker, you mentioned Alex. I'm curious to see what they do with Roquan and Patrick Queen. Both have dealt with injuries. Both have noticeably struggled against some of the gap scheme, power play type stuff that maybe is a reflection of those injuries and just their not unwillingness, but their hesitance to put their body in the line of fire of a 315-pound pulling lineman. So it would make sense to me if those guys only play for a quarter, a half, kind of you treat this game like a preseason in terms of the amount of reps. And then in the secondary, I think Kyle Hamilton, even though he was limited on Thursday, even though he looked fine, relatively fine moving around the field, he missed Sunday's game against the Dolphins. I would not be shocked if he missed Saturday's game against Pittsburgh, just because he is so important to what the Ravens do. He's tweaked that knee a couple times now. You don't want him at anything less than anywhere close to full strength for whoever it's going to be in that divisional round. So I would imagine that they rest him instead, or that they rest him as well. And, it's kind of a guessing game on the rest of the secondary, because Ronald Darby didn't practice all week as he was dealing with an illness. Darius Washington, who started week 1 as the slot corner, hasn't played since week 1 because of a pectoral tear, I believe, but he was designated to return. He might be activated for this one. Brandon Stevens was a full participant in practice Thursday after missing Sunday's game against the Dolphins, but he's dealing with an ankle injury. He's like the most well-traveled cornerback in the NFL in terms of like yards actually run on the field this season. So you wonder if this will be a game where he plays more than a series or two, maybe a quarter, and just have him, well and rested for that playoff. So it's so many spinning plates to really consider for the Ravens and their coaches. Sure. I do not envy the balance of trying to finally get a win against the Steelers versus finally getting everyone ready for the playoffs. But they're going to have to figure out a way to do it. And maybe if Pittsburgh takes a huge early lead and really forces the Ravens' hands to rest all the guys who really matter, then that'll make it easy for them to figure out what to do.
I will sign up for that. That is for sure. But ultimately, as to your point, they have to field a team. I mean, you have to put those guys out there. So while this game, quote unquote, doesn't mean anything for Baltimore, and from a playoff standpoint, it does not. It means a lot for these young guys that may see expanded roles. I heard somebody tell me that Ben Cleveland may be a big game for him, a chance to start with Zeitler being out. Who is this a big game for in terms of backups that will have a new opportunity to really get some serious playing time?
Yeah, Zeitler started on Sunday against Miami, and Ben Cleveland started for Zeitler on Sunday and did pretty well. He's a third-year guy, former third-round pick who has not really lived up to expectations. I'm not really sure how much of a great fit he is in Todd Monken's run schemes, but we'll see on that. Elsewhere, Rashad Bateman, former first-round pick, has not had the season that he would have liked, but he's a guy who is tantalizing, I think, to a lot of Ravens fans, because every single week some guy on PFF puts out a chart showing who gets the most separation in the NFL, and it is always Rashad Bateman toward the bottom right quadrant because he is getting separation, but he is not getting production. He had a pretty nice game against the Dolphins, a handful of catches, over 50, 60 yards, finally getting out of this zone where it's like 3 catches for 35 yards. So he could be a guy who, it would not surprise me if he gets 10 targets and over 100 yards. He just has that kind of potential. He's had really nice games with Tyler Huntley starting as the quarterback. Elsewhere, you look at the right tackle, Daniel Fa'alele, second-round guy, huge hulking dude, Australian who's made the pivot to football, doesn't have the foot speed typically to handle a lot of speed rushers, but typically once he gets engaged with guys, does a pretty good job of locking them down. And then you have, some of the guys in the rookie class who have not had a chance to play a whole lot this year. Trenton Simpson, third-round pick, even faster than Patrick Queen, but has really had a tough time getting onto the field defensively. I think he's played just 20 snaps this year because Roquan and because PQ have played both over, I think, 98% of the defensive snaps this year. So interesting to see him, interested to see Tavius Robinson, another 4th-round outside linebacker who's been a rotational guy, but has not had to play more than 10 to 15 snaps over the past 2 months or so. So not a lot of guys that I think Steelers fans would recognize besides, some of the kind of free agent signings like a Ronald Darby or Rocky Sin, both of whom had their roles go up and down this year, depending on who's healthy in that Ravens secondary. But, the Ravens have a great coaching staff. They've done a great job of putting guys who you wouldn't think would be capable of stopping superstars in a position to succeed. And it's going to be interesting to see just how well they have these guys ready with so many kind of countervailing interests at play for this game.
You set me up perfectly there, Jonas, because I was going to ask about DC Mike McDonald and what he's done to take this Ravens defense to even greater heights. Baltimore always has a really strong defense, but I think McDonald's taken them to a new level. What's made him so effective, and what beyond him being a really strong defensive mind makes him somebody likely to receive some head coaching looks this offseason cycle?
I think it's just the fact that he's doing all this at such a young age. I mean, you really have to kind of scratch your head and think how many guys at age 36, which is Mike's age, have been able to have this kind of 2-year run of defensive success. I mean, you look at someone like D'Amico Ryans, who's been an instant smash success in Houston, coming off what he did in the 49ers, another guy under age 40 who was able to not really need the bumps and bruises and the hard losses that you can kind of accrue as a first-time defensive coordinator to understand how other offenses around the NFL want to work, how they want to operate. the fact that Mike's been able to come in and lead this defense to, really new heights not even seen, I think, under Wink Martindale, has been really impressive. What he's done is just be able to, have this defense survive in a too high shell, basically, as often as you can. And when you do that, you are obviously giving up some integrity up front in the run defense. And we've seen good teams like the Steelers in the fourth quarter of that Week 5 game be able to take advantage of that. We saw the 49ers take advantage of that. We saw the Dolphins take advantage of that. But you look at the Ravens DVOA, I still think they're top 10 in run defense. And when you're able to play with those two high safeties and really put a lid on, what opposing quarterbacks can do in taking deep shots downfield, then you really do a number on opponents' big play potential. I mean, the Ravens, I haven't checked in recently, but for the first 3 quarters of the season, were at the top of the NFL, like the number of 20+ air yard pass plays completed. It's just, they keep everything in front of them. They're able to, with their simulated pressures, with their creepers, they're able to create free runners at the quarterback with just 4 guys. Sometimes, they're able to get to him with just 3 guys. So you put all that together, you really have, the perfect type of guy to limit the modern offense. Because if you can keep 7 guys in pass coverage and only need 4 to get a pressure on the quarterback under 3 seconds, and you are going to be living right as a defensive coordinator. And obviously the Ravens have a lot of great talent. Roquan Smith was really a skeleton key that has unlocked this defense and what it could do schematically. But, to get a career year out of a guy like Brandon Stephens, who we didn't even know if he'd be playing outside cornerback, to turn Jadeveon Clowney, Kyle Van Noy, turn back the clock on their careers, get Justin Madubuike to a 13 sack guy. That's no accident. That this staff led by Mike Macdonald has really done a good job of figuring out what this defense does well, does what it does best, and putting themselves in positions to succeed with really innovative game plans.
Couple more questions here. Speaking with Jonas Schaefer, who covers the Ravens for the Baltimore Banner. Justin Tucker, just 1 of 5 from 50+ yards this year. His long is 50. Is there any reason for, by his lofty standards, he seems to be struggling this year, especially from distance?
Oh, well, you'd have to ask the Pro Bowler voters if they think he's struggling because they still voted him into the Pro
Steeler
Bowl
fans are salty. Boswell getting snubbed.
I totally get it. It's totally fair. I think a little bit of helmet scouting there with Justin getting into the Pro Bowl, but some of those misses have been from longer than 55, 57. Sure. I think he started the year missing a 59-yarder. There was a 61-yarder. He had like a bad miss against the Chargers in prime time in that game that they were fortunately able to overcome. I don't know how much you can, say how much you want to attribute to just him getting older. Interesting that the Ravens had a chance to kick a field goal from like 51, 52, 53 thereabouts on Sunday against Miami, but they went forward on 4th and 7 instead. That was the nice Likely catch and run touchdown right? for Isaiah Likely. Yeah. And we asked John post-game about why he decided to keep the offense on the field in such a disadvantageous position, and he said, "Oh well, the wind was whipping around the stadium, and we didn't really like what that how that would factor into Justin Tucker's kind of kicking calculus." So Justin wanted to take that kick. He's always advocating for him to be on the field to take those kind of kicks, but the Ravens went with the offense instead, which was kind of a surprise because John has typically not been overly aggressive on 4th down this year. So I still think, based on his current form, his recent form, he does look like the Justin Tucker of old, but it is a little bit disconcerting knowing that over the first half of the season, he was not anywhere close to, the automatic Justin Tucker that Steelers fans have known to grow and hate. I mean, I don't think he's missed a kick in Pittsburgh since basically his rookie year, if ever. I forget exactly what the stat is, but it's incredible. So it'll be interesting to see how the Ravens treat him because it should be some rainy conditions on Saturday. It's going to be a mess to plan, to say nothing of how it's going to be to kick in. So if I'm the Steelers, I'm expecting the regular Justin Tucker and being pleasantly surprised if it's not. But going into the playoffs, you do have this kind of worry in the back of your head. Can you count on him to nail a 53-yarder in the third quarter and a 51-yarder in the fourth to put away a team?
maybe it's an obvious question to ask given that Baltimore is the number one seed, widely regarded as the best team in football, but is anything less than a Super Bowl win going to be a disappointment for this team when all is said and done?
I'm sure if you put, those guys, if I hook them up to a lie detector, they would probably say Super Bowl victory. I think I would say personally, just Super Bowl appearance. I mean, this has been a franchise. I don't need to tell Steelers fans about the kind of dissonance of getting to the playoffs but not actually doing anything, and what it means for
yeah,
the
front
health of
row
the
seat to that
franchise.
show. Yeah.
Yeah. But they have, in 2019 they were the best team in football. Everyone was picking them to go to the Super Bowl, to win the Super Bowl. They were 10-point favorites against the Titans, and then they fell flat on their face. It's been a while since they've had a postseason where they've won more than one game, which, with Joe Flacco and John Harbaugh in those early days, you could usually count, every once in a while on a nice little run to the divisional round from the wild card round, or excuse me, to the championship game round from the wild card round, or, just making it to the Super Bowl together. So I think I don't want to say anyone's legacy is on the line because John Harbaugh has, shown himself to be one of the NFL's best coaches, but you could argue that Lamar might never have a team as well-rounded as this, where it is a top 2 defense, a top 2 or 3 special teams, and a very talented offense. I mean, obviously Lamar, the hope is that, like with Mahomes and Josh Allen, he is going to be a powerful enough force that this team should be in the playoff discussion every year, but he needs to, carry this team at least to the Super Bowl. Maybe some fans will be content with the AFC Championship game because he's never been as far as that round, but the vibes are good in Baltimore, and if Cleveland, say, comes into Baltimore in the wild card in the divisional round and knocks them off, then there's definitely going to be hell to pay for a lot of guys because this is starting to feel like a year where things are looking pretty good for them in terms of that AFC path.
Sure. Imagine if Joe Flacco comes into Baltimore and beats Baltimore. What a storyline that would be. It just feels like this is, and winning a Super Bowl obviously is so difficult regardless of seeding. But Mahomes and the Chiefs are struggling. Burrow's not around to be that potent offense. Buffalo's not even guaranteed to make the playoffs as of this moment. Feels like this is the lane, the opportunity for Baltimore to get there and win it. You kind of folded into one of my last questions here, Jonas. Is there a weakness for this Baltimore team? Because offensively, defensively, special teams, coaching, I mean, maybe some general health concerns, but who's healthy at this point in the season? What is the weakness for this team? Basically, if this team does not win the Super Bowl, why would that occur? Or would that not happen?
Probably because they, are gashed by a good running team. It hasn't mattered yet. It hasn't mattered really since the start of the season. The Colts when they beat the Ravens, had a nice ground game. The Steelers, even though that first half was really tough sledding, they turned things up after the first half. The Browns did a nice job when they beat the Ravens in Baltimore of taking advantage of those 2 high looks and running into those relatively light boxes. So I think that's probably the big concern on defense. Assuming that Marlon Humphrey is healthy, assuming that Kyle Hamilton is healthy, you feel good about where that pass defense is. And then on the offensive side of the ball, you just wonder, is the Lamar of old, the Lamar who statistically has been one of the NFL's worst quarterbacks in terms of playoff efficiency, a thing of the past? Is that shedded like a old skin with the separation from Greg Roman? Mm-hmm. Is the rejuvenation with Todd Monken enough to cast Lamar in this new light as a playoff savior rather than a playoff albatross? Maybe too harsh words, but he has not been especially good in the playoffs. He's had some bad luck with injuries and bad teams and bad weather, but he needs to this is put up or shut up time for him, definitely. And then I guess elsewhere around him on that offense, you do wonder if he goes against if the Ravens go against a very top tier pass rush and Ronnie Stanley is hurt and can't anchor, if Morgan Moses is dealing with something with that upper body and does not do a good job of keeping guys off his chest, then that offensive line is going to be compromised because Lamar loves nothing more than getting to his second read, to his third read, making guys miss in the backfield. And if that pass rush is getting to him and throwing the rhythm off, you wonder, can this offense be as consistently good out of structure as it has been during this nice little hot streak, because typically, you have to make plays when you get that drop and find the open receiver. But if Lamar is playing with a half field read because he's being flushed out of the pocket time and time again, then chances are the offense is not going to be as successful as it was Sunday or against the 49ers or against the Rams. So you just wonder, if that offensive line is compromised in a couple significant ways, how much is that going to throw Lamar off schedule, not just in the run game with handoffs, but also in dropbacks as well.
My last question for you, Jonas. I'm sure you've been burning the midnight oil trying to predict this game, worrying about who's going to win between Pittsburgh and Baltimore. But if you're inclined to give a prediction for this one, we always ask our guests to do so. If not, just keys to the game for Baltimore victory, even though, again, I know it doesn't matter nearly as much as typical Steelers-Ravens games.
Yeah, I mean, I think I'm a bit of a prisoner of 2019, Alex, and that I just keep thinking about that team going into that game against the Steelers in the regular season finale in Pittsburgh, in Baltimore. I think kind of yucky weather in that one as well. Starting RG3, who was not great in that game, but the Ravens got enough from their run game, from their defense, from their special teams to win relatively comfortably. I don't think if this is going to be a Ravens win, it will be comfortable. In our picks on the Baltimore Banner today, I believe I picked Ravens 20, Steelers 17. It's not because I don't think this iteration of Pittsburgh is a good team. I just think that rivalry games are weird games, and weird stuff happens when two teams that know each other as well as they do get together. And I think if the Ravens can do a good job of gumming up the works for the Steelers ground game, which might be harder said than done because of we don't really know who's going to be playing up front, then I like what they can do defensively. I don't know how well Mason Rudolph is going to handle all the pre-snap disguises that Mike Macdonald is probably going to throw at him. Don't know, if Pickens is going to be as splendid as he's been recently, even if it is some of these Ravens backups covering him, because Brock Yassin, Ronald Darby both had really nice games on Sunday against Tyreek Hill and that Dolphins passing core. And then on the other side of the ball, like I mentioned early on with Tyler Huntley, Lamar has taken, I think he took a snap, he's taken a sack, basically 1 of every 9 dropbacks against Pittsburgh as a starter, which is just absurd. He's taken 20 sacks total in 4 games. If Tyler Huntley is getting rid of the ball, if these running backs are, getting 4 or 5 yards of carry, which with this interior might be a challenge, especially if some guys are missing, then I think you can at least count on 1 or 2 touchdowns. And I don't think this is going to be a high-scoring game unless this Ravens defense just completely implodes. So I just think that with the advantage of home field advantage, I'm sure the Ravens fans will be nice and liquored up with a 4:30 kickoff. John's probably, burning the midnight oil, to borrow your phrase, of, finally getting a breakthrough win against Pittsburgh, because it's 2 straight losses, and I think 6 of 7 overall for the Ravens against Pittsburgh. So he's determined to win something for his pride and turn the tide in this rivalry game. Obviously, it doesn't matter in the big picture, assuming no one gets hurt. But I just think that it's really tough to apply logic and reason to a Ravens Steelers game. I mean, you just look at week 5, the Ravens were the better team that first half and only came at that with a field goal advantage, and it ended up costing them in the second half. So no result would shock me, frankly, aside from a Ravens blowout victory. But I just think that the vibes around this team and the coaching on this team are good enough that I'm relatively comfortable picking a slight Ravens win in this one.
Fair enough. And the weirdest part is Pittsburgh, if they lose this game, could still make the playoffs, despite being out of the playoff picture as of this moment. If they lose, and then if Denver wins, if Jacksonville loses, and the Colts and Texans don't tie, Pittsburgh gets in. So it's a wild week 18 to be talking with Jonas Schaefer here for the Baltimore Band. You can follow him on Twitter at Jonas_Schaefer. Jonas, thanks so much for joining us today. Appreciate it, and enjoy the game on Saturday.
Thanks, Alex. And if I can add one thing, I don't know that Ravens fans would even mind a Steelers win, because there is a world in which the Steelers win and I think the Jaguars win as well. And if Buffalo loses to Miami, then that knocks the Bills out of the playoffs altogether. And, Buffalo, say what you will about their injuries, about their shortcomings, but they are number 3 in DVOA right now. And I think the Ravens would much rather have them out of the playoff picture than, have to know that there's a possibility that they might face them in the divisional round or the AFC Championship game. So even though it might be a bitter pill to swallow, if a Steelers win means that Buffalo is taken out of circulation in the playoffs, it might not be the worst thing in the world for the Ravens.
So tell Harbaugh that all 11 Ravens defenders should just lay down on the snap each time and allow Pittsburgh to win this one 70-0. We'd appreciate that. But it's an important point. Yeah, Buffalo, they could be the 2 seed. They could be out of the playoffs. That is how crazy Week 18 is. So thank you again, Jonas. Appreciate it.
Thank you, Alex. Appreciate you having me.
And welcome back to the Terrible Podcast. And again, our special thanks to Jonas Schaefer for the Baltimore Banner, giving his thoughts on the Ravens. Follow him on Twitter at Jonas_Schaefer. And you probably noticed by the time you listened to the interview, but it was just me recording that one. Dave had some technical computer gremlins today, and so it was just me. So that's the reason why you only heard Dave, but we still thank Jonas for all of his time.
Absolutely. So certainly had him on twice this year, and he was probably excited, I imagine, to talk to you because I think he had said that they had the day off today covering the team and all like that, obviously the day ahead of the game. So make sure to shout out Jonas on Twitter and let him know that you heard him.
Yeah, again, that's Jonas_Schaefer, SHAFF. All right, Dave, let's you and I preview this game. And you're right. Even doing the scouting report was difficult to write about because what do you say? What do you expect? Schematically, they should be the same personality, offensively, defensively, but without a clear plan of who's going to play and some of the rotations and those types of things. It's really kind of more about Pittsburgh taking care of their business and being detailed and not being sloppy than it is maybe about matchups when it comes to Baltimore. There is still some element of that, of course, but less so than a typical week. So starting with the Ravens offense, no Lamar, doubtful on Zay Flowers, Odell Beckham Jr. ruled out. The tackles may not play. The starting guard's going to be out in Zeitler. Tyler Huntley starting, but he's not new to Pittsburgh. He's going to make his 4th start against the Steelers. That's the same as Lamar has had against Pittsburgh in his career. So seeing Huntley is basically like seeing Lamar from an experience standpoint. The talent standpoint is different, but they're similar guys. They're athletic. They're mobile. But Jonas did say that Huntley gets the ball out much quicker than Lamar. So that's going to be kind of one big difference in this game. It'd be harder to get pressure on Tyler Huntley because that ball is going to come out in pretty rapid fashion.
Here's the good thing. They've played Huntley so much over the last couple of years, right? Because Lamar's missed time and all like that. At least they have tape on him against them specifically. Mm-hmm. So it's not like you're dealing with a backup coming in that you haven't seen a lot of. They have specifically seen a lot of them. When you look at this game, and when I was rolling back through the all 22, I was on both sides of football. I was thinking to myself, offense is probably a little bit more easier to kind of predict of schematic wise because you are who you are. It's not, a lot of these teams run the same thing and they stay true to their identity. I think, we talked about ahead of the last meeting, they run a lot of the bash concept and all like that. They'll pull a couple of those linemen. They like to run that outside zone stuff. I think one thing that jumped out to me on going back last week and watching that Dolphins tape, man, the Dolphins played a lot of man, it seemed like, in that game. And boy, did they have some coverage bust in there as well, too. And they did a lot. The Ravens did a lot of good things with getting guys rubbed off. Man, a couple of those early throws, first half down the right side to wide open guys getting rubbed off. One, I think, was to Justin Hill for a touchdown. I think another was to Flowers down that side. And it just the Dolphins did not go into that game schematically ready on the defensive side of the football there. That stuck out to me. Now, the Ravens do what they do otherwise with that running game. Pull up. Getting those offensive linemen on the move, using some of that misdirection stuff with the bash, and you don't know if the quarterback's going to keep it or if the wide receiver coming across is going to keep it, or if they just hand it off to the running back in certain situations in those. So you're going to see a lot of that again with them. In other words, I think they're going to be who they are on the offensive side of football. There, I would expect the way this Steelers defense has kind of been forced to morph over the last several weeks. There, I don't know if you want to play a lot of man against the Ravens, particularly in this game where you're going to see some backup wide receivers out there and all in a still mobile quarterback in Huntley. So once again, for like the third, fourth game in a row here, I would expect the Steelers to be zone heavy on defense and focus. That way they can focus specifically on shutting down the run, and B, make sure you always have eyes on Huntley.
Yeah, I think zone eyes can help. Although if that ball comes out quickly, you don't want Huntley to get into a rhythm. You may want to contest some of those, shorter, rhythm passes, 3-step drop, 5-step drop, play some tighter man coverage. I think getting your hands up will be important for the D line for TJ Watt, because if that ball is going to come out, as Jonas said, in like 2.1, 2.2 seconds, hard to get after the quarterback, even if the backup tackles are in, and they probably will be. But I think trying to bat some passes at the line where Hayward, Watt, Highsmith can excel is going to be important in this one. But you're right. Schematically, they're going to be the same outfit. Todd Monken's not going to change things dramatically. It's going to look like the same team conceptually in terms of results, a different story. But I think they're a deep team. They're talented. The receivers are deep. Bateman's talented.
They're tight ends, man.
Likely. Good Lord.
Golly, where do they keep getting the tight ends from?
Yeah, Likely has 4 touchdowns in the 5 games that Mark Andrews has missed. And so he had that great one-handed snag on that 4th down play against Miami that you kind of referenced last week. So they got even your guy. Weren't you a Charlie Kolar fan coming at Iowa State?
No, it was the other Charlie Warner, the Georgia kid Warner. with the 49ers. No, don't give me credit for that one.
Okay, all right, fair enough. But Likely making big plays for them, that's for sure. So there's still talent here. I do think if they're going to sit Stanley and Moses to left and right tackle respectively, obviously advantage for Highsmith and TJ Watt, especially Watt facing Daniel Faalele, the big right tackle, 370 pounds, whatever he's weighing in at now. Can Pittsburgh, can Watt, use those speed rushes to win the edge? I imagine there's going to be some help and some chipping Watt's way. I want to see Highsmith have a big game. That spin, teams have figured out a spin move this year, and at least been able to sit on that a lot more. And so can he be able to work that on to Macari, the backup left tackle, or can he just make some plays there? So want to see that. But I do think trying to get your hands in passing lanes will be important for an offense likely to get the ball out pretty quickly, given Huntley's style and given that they're going to be playing some backup linemen in this game.
Is Jonas pretty convinced that the Steelers won't see the 2 top tackles?
He was trending that way, and Zeitler's out. He even mentioned that Linderbaum may not play or may not play much in this game just because they want to make sure that he's healthy for the divisional game. So it's hard to say for sure. He wasn't 100% on that, but likely they're going to see some limited or no action in this game, especially at tackle, especially Ronnie Stanley.
All right. Look, this is obviously because of the personnel aspect of it. But you got a guy in Huntley that's got some experience and all like that. You've got some quality guys like we talked about, Likely and I remember watching a lot of Justice Hill tape back when he was in college as a offshoot of having to watch so much Mason Rudolph tape, right?
I guess they were together. Was that them in Washington and those guys all
part
of the same group?
I mean, he is, obviously he's an undersized back, but man, he can if he gets out in the open field, he's a dangerous guy, and they're not afraid to send him downfield as well too. So don't let that guy kill you in the run or pass game.
Yeah, they always have speed at running back, whether it's been Dobbins and Mitchell. Unfortunately, those guys have gotten hurt over the years, but Hill still has that. Didn't Hill have a big game against Pittsburgh? Was it last year? Didn't Hill go off? Or am I thinking of somebody else because they rotate these backs so often? Yeah,
I'll have to roll back. I don't remember specifically. You talking about the later game last year?
No, I'm looking it up. It wasn't last year. Maybe I'm thinking of somebody else then. Maybe I'm thinking of a Dobbins or something. When Dobbins, I think, came back from an injury and just, looked true to form immediately. But anyway, the run game is still effective because conceptually it's strong. You mentioned the pulling guards, the bash concepts, the back away type stuff, the quarterback run element. How do you defend the quarterback run element? Obviously when you're trying to account for them, you got to kind of be +1 in the box to deal with that. There are some schematic, strategic issues trying to deal with the quarterback rushing element.
How many explosive plays did they have last week? 7, and 7 of 20 yards or more, and only one of them was a run.
Yeah, and then even
that was Justice Hill for 41. I'm sure you came across there. But and look, I mean, make no mistake about it, though. Huntley is not Lamar Jackson. Lamar Jackson really played well in that game against the Dolphins as well, too, stepping up and all like that. So, and if the goal is for him they don't want to get him obviously in those third and long situations, and that's one area where the Steelers must do a good job of get him in situations where he might have to hold on to that football a little bit more. I tell you, the thing that really stuck out to me in that Miami tape was their ability to get players rubbed off, and even early in the game too. I don't know, what was it, the first or second snap of the game? I think the Dolphins, I think, had played like cover 3 on that situation, and Jackson missed a streaking, I think it was Flowers down the right hand side that had the mailbox hand up. So these guys can get free on you, and obviously they a couple of their top wide receivers aren't going to play in this game here, but schematically, especially with the misdirection of what they do in the run game and all like that, it's still not going to be an easy chore overall.
And it was 1 yard shy of qualifying for that explosive play list, but Huntley threw a 19-yard touchdown to end that game down the seam. They ran 12 personnel, 2-by-2 formation, tight ends to one side, twin receivers set to the other, and ran verticals by the tight ends. And Huntley hit that for 19 to, I think, Likely, or forget who the target was on that play. So listen, Huntley can Kohler. Okay, yeah, Huntley can play. He's experienced. He knows Pittsburgh. He's not going to be faced. This is not facing, the Browns sacrificial lamb in the final week, the Thad Lewis's and Seneca Wallace's of the world from yesteryear. This is facing an accomplished quarterback with experience.
Look, put some respect on his name. Huntley's a Pro Bowler.
He was. Oh yeah, I forgot about that. The Pro Bowl gets so weird sometimes with the voting, but he was like the 4th alternate, or wasn't that the story with Huntley?
Hey, he's a Pro Bowler, Alex. Put some respect on his name.
All the same there. And Lamar Jackson expressed confidence that he thinks that Huntley can go out there and get the job done. And he could. All right, flipping over to the defense, and you might see some more familiar faces here, at least in the front 7, although I think Roquan Smith, Patrick Queen will be either very limited or not play at all. In the secondary, likely to miss some top names, including Marlon Humphrey, Kyle Hamilton, etc. The D-line, though, I think will largely be intact in terms of dressing, snap counts. We'll see. To me, my main takeaway watching Baltimore is attack the middle of the field. Baltimore plays a ton of too high, a lot of cover 2. I think Pat Frymouth would have a big day on Saturday.
Yeah, good call. You roll back to even just last week with what they did coverage-wise, a lot of zone coverage in that game against the Dolphins. You would think because of their personnel, try to the KISS method, keep it simple, stupid. I foresee a lot of cover 2 zone in this.
Yeah, look, Miami had a ton of plays over the middle of the field of how they move the ball.
Right. So that and we'll see how long, if any, Roquan and Queen play. If those guys do play any, if I'm Harbaugh, I'm getting them out of the game as soon as possible. The Steelers have got to go into this game at least attempting to run heavy early to open up that, to maybe get a safety to come down or what have you. But I'm with you, Alex. Middle of the field stuff should be available to them. Cover 3, cover 2 beaters, zone type stuff. And man, it would make life a lot easier if they're able to come out with a running game like they came out with early against Seattle and had that kind of success, and then force Baltimore into being even that much more conservative effort to stop the run.
Yeah, they got to run the ball. There's no question about that. That D-line's still going to be, I think, tough. I don't know exactly how much Madubuike and Pearson them are going to play, but it's
the
always
way
tough
he's
to
playing, I don't put him out there, man. The way he's playing this year, but once again, numbers might dictate that he has to play some snaps. They ought to throw a parade the moment he leaves the game, though.
Right. But I mean, heck, talk about, we know the big names, Humphrey, Hamilton, Smith, but how about Geno Stone, the Newcastle product? He's got 7 interceptions this year. The last Raven to have more picks than Geno Stone was Ed Reed in 2010. I mean, we're talking about some crazy numbers from him. So they're talented. And then schematically under Mike Macdonald, I think you and I could play for Mike Macdonald and make some plays out there. I mean, just in terms
you're giving me too much credit.
All right, I'll make some plays then, because just schematically, the pressure looks that Jonas talked about. I mean, that defense is just, one of the better defenses we've seen. Now, again, they're going to miss some of their key guys, but when you have good scheme, you can make up for missing some of those key players. I mean, they played without half a secondary last week and held Miami in check, so that really shows what they're able to do.
Now Miami did miss some plays in that game. But point taken. It's amazing when you look at how many sacks this team has.
57.
I've got them at 55.
Is it 55? I have 57 in my notes. But either way, it's a lot of sacks.
Matabuke has 13 of them. My God. Clowney has 8.5. Van Noy. You'll remember we talked about Van Noy potentially being a guy that we thought could land in with the Steelers earlier in the offseason there. He's having a great season. Owe has 5 of them there. Their inside linebackers getting in on it. Arthur Millette, didn't he have one in the first game against the Steelers off the edge?
I believe so, yes.
So I mean, you look at all the different players that have sacks for them, and it kind of, I'm surprised they have, plain and simple, I'm surprised they have as many sacks as they do as a defense. They've got more than the Steelers, I think.
They lead the league in sacks. Yeah. So, yeah, they have more than anybody right now. And part of it is scheme. And they're doing it from 2 high looks, and they send some pressures on third down. But, yeah, Matabuke's he's got the most sacks by a Raven since Elvis Dumerville in 2014. So some really gaudy numbers they're putting up. Their run defense has not been great statistically. They're averaging 4.5 yards per carry. But as Jonas talked about, it was some of the 2 high looks they play. But they buckle things down in tight. They've only allowed 5 rushing touchdowns this season. That's the fewest in football. If it stays at 5, through the Steelers game, it'll be the fewest a defense has allowed in terms of rushing touchdowns since Chicago in 2018. So there's some really gaudy numbers in terms of the interceptions they get. I think they're 3rd in the league in interceptions. They're 1st in sacks. They're 1st in turnover differential. All those numbers, all those key metrics play in Baltimore's favor. It's why they're the 1 seed and right now probably the Super Bowl favorite.
We got to see a repeat from this offense from last week of staying out of those 3rd and 7 or more situations. Stay ahead of the chains, because you don't want Mason back there having to sit in a pocket 13 times in this game, needing 7 or more yards in situations where he'll have to hold the football, regardless of who's on the field for the Ravens, because they'll go after him. They'll know that he's not as mobile, and they will dial it up even more in obvious passing long situations. So it's so important for this offense of the Steelers to stay ahead of the chains in this game, especially early, until maybe some of those other starters get out of there. So once again, I think it goes back to running the football early. As you mentioned, this could be a repeat of that first meeting against the Bengals with a guy like Pat Freiermuth. There ought to be plenty of opportunities in the middle of the field for him, especially if you get some too high looks, as you mentioned, and even some Tampa 2 guy, where the linebackers have to run and carry the middle of the field. So that's where the Steelers need to hit. And obviously, if you get in those situations where you get a single high look, or even some cover 3 situations there where you can look to the outside to go over the top to a guy like George Pickens.
Yeah, those chances will be there, and you can count on Rudolph taking them. But yeah, if they're playing too high without Hamilton, without Smith and Queen, then you're going to get some good, real estate opportunities for Freiermuth and really attack those inside linebackers, because Smith and Queen are the guys you stay away from, but their replacements are likely to be Trenton Simpson, the rookie, who's played 20 defensive snaps this year, and Delshon Phillips, who's a core special teams guy, has played 34 defensive snaps. Test those guys, work their eye discipline off of play action and motion and how they handle and communicate those types of things, because they've not really had to do much of that this season. So I think I'm really going to try to stress and attack those off-ball linebackers.
All right. Good point.
All right. Any other thoughts here, Baltimore? I mean, Tucker, we kind of ragged on him a bit, but obviously he's still Justin Tucker. And in a close game, he gets within 60, he's got a chance to make it.
Yeah, there's guaranteed points there that are going to happen in this game once they get past a little past midfield there. So look, take your chances and let him have 5 or 6 field goals in a game if need be. Obviously, you don't want to see the total up that high, but you got to keep the touchdowns limited in this game.
Yeah, and Pittsburgh at least has the 5th best red zone defense this year. That's been one of their calling cards, despite struggling overall in a lot of situational football aspects. But, I don't want to give away my score prediction. I still expect this game to be close. I don't think Pittsburgh's going to roll Baltimore, even with their backups in. When it's Steelers Ravens, when they know each other this well, when Huntley has an experience against Pittsburgh, it's going to be typical Pittsburgh Baltimore. Close game, down to the wire, 4th quarter, final 5 minutes. That's going to decide the winner of this contest.
Look, if you get out to a little bit of a lead on these guys, you might get them being done with playing with their food,
In the sense of pulling some of those guys? Or
getting those guys out there even earlier, because look, their thing, the Baltimore's big gain out of this game is to come out healthy.
It's the number one and the only goal.
That's their win. And if they get an extra win of beating the Steelers in obviously a divisional game and potentially being the reason the Steelers don't make the playoffs, that's extra credit right there. But man, if you could take those first couple of drives down the field and get 14 or 10 points and the defense do their job early, they might lose interest a little early in this one.
Sure. And I know this is probably overthinking and really not part of their calculation, but it's not like it's not like if Baltimore beats Pittsburgh, the Steelers are eliminated right then and there. Right. It might have a different feel if that was the case. Again, obviously you're going to diminish their chances if Pittsburgh loses, but it's a little different than like beat them and they go home immediately. So maybe there's a little less extra to play for from a rivalry perspective in this one. But I mean, Baltimore does want to win because they've not beaten Pittsburgh in a while. So it's still a rivalry type game. And this backups are going to have an opportunity to play and they want to make some plays. Ben Cleveland and Simpson and Phillips, these guys want to go out there and show what they can do because typically they don't get this kind of opportunity.
Another interesting thing to this game that we should probably talk about. Let's go to Alex for the weather.
Yeah, now I think they were initially calling for snow earlier this week, but it looks like it's going to turn towards just kind of a rainy. This is 2019 all over, Dave. This is going to be a rainy, kind of messy, windy mess that they're calling for like an inch of rain and winds at 10 to 20 miles per hour. And so that's the forecast as of Friday. So 2019 was Baltimore 1 seat sitting their guys, Pittsburgh needing a win and help. It rained. Pittsburgh did not get the help they needed, and they kind of flatlined in the second half. So this is basically just a redo of 2019.
How much, and obviously we went over the inactives, from that game and all like that and all, but wonder how that plays into some decisions to get some guys off a wet field and that kind of thing. That's a great weather forecast you gave us, Alex.
Thank you. I'm the next Joe DiNardo. That probably means nothing to you, but it means a lot to the Yinzers like me. But that it's going to probably be harder to throw the football when it's rainy and messy, and may diminish some of the Ravens' speed a bit and help Pittsburgh because they're not that fast. So those things may play in Pittsburgh's favor, but it's actually a really good point because it's going to be kind of a disgusting mess on Saturday.
All right,
Dave, before we make our picks for the Steelers-Ravens game, and for the last time this regular season, our picks for week number 18, let's hear from our friends over at MyBookie.
All right, gear up, sports fans. The national championship and NFL playoffs are here, and it's time to get in on the action with MyBookie. Don't just watch. Score big with exclusive boosted odds and huge prize contests that'll have you feeling the Super Bowl fever before it even hits. Whether you're a seasoned pro or ready to roll for the first time, MyBookie is your ticket to turning your sports knowledge into cold, hard cash. MyBookie has the largest online lineup of odds, contests, and Vegas-style casino games, making it your ultimate destination for all type of fun 24/7 right at your fingertips. If you've been waiting for the right time to get in on the action, the wait is now over. Make your winning move today and sign up at MyBookie. Use our promo code TERRIBLE to claim your deposit up to $1,000. That's right. Promo code TERRIBLE for an opportunity to boost your betting power. Experience the thrill of sports betting right from the comfort of your own home. Because with MyBookie, you can bet anything, anytime, anywhere. Join MyBookie today and be part of the winning team. And obviously, you can get to it by going to mybookie.ag. And please don't forget to use promo code TERRIBLE if you're a first-time sign-up player.
All right, Dave, let's make our picks around the NFL, and then we'll finish things out with Steelers Ravens. Even though it's the first game, we'll hold them for last.
All right, the Houston Texans later on Saturday night playing on the road against the Indianapolis Colts. The Texans are 1-point road favorites in this one. Now, you can root for a tie in this one if you so desire, but only if the Steelers beat beat the Ravens, I believe there. But I think I don't know, crazy stuff happens, right? But regardless, the Texans are 1-point road favorites in this one.
Yeah, maybe the weirdest playoff scenario of all is that a tie between Houston and Indianapolis could be either really good or really bad for Pittsburgh, depending on the scenarios. But if Pittsburgh beats Baltimore and these two teams tie, the Colts and Texans, Pittsburgh gets in before Sunday even kicks off. So that's one of those weird notes to mention. For my pick, I've been on Houston all season. I think the Colts have done a great job under Shane Steichen and, of course, blew out Pittsburgh. My heart says Houston. I'm going to go with the Colts. I'm going to say the Colts find a way. They found a way to get it done all season long.
You know what? I'm leaning that way as well, too. I think the Colts at home in an obvious big game for them, the experience that they have at the quarterback position. Houston's been hit by a couple of injuries as of late. Give me the Colts to win this one outright. So I want that point. I think the Colts win this by 3. Next up, Detroit Lions hosting Minnesota Vikings. The Lions are 3.5-point home favorites over the Vikings.
Yeah, can Minnesota find a way to get in? I think they played so much quarterback roulette. I think they've really mismanaged that situation pretty poorly. Kevin O'Connell has. I will take Detroit.
I'll take Detroit to cover that 3.5 points as well, too. Cincinnati Bengals closing out their season at home against the Cleveland Browns. Browns obviously resting a lot of players in this game. The Bengals are 7-point home favorites.
If I told you before this year began that the Browns would rest Joe Flacco in the finale, wouldn't believe you.
To get him ready for the playoffs.
To get him ready for the playoffs. Yeah, with all those guys rested, PJ Walker starting, I will take the Bengals.
I'll take the Bengals to cover that 7 points at home as well, too. The Carolina Panthers at home hosting the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. The Buccaneers are 4.5-point road favorites in this one.
Yeah, got to go Tampa. Everything on the line here against Carolina, just with eyes towards the offseason. Baker seems healthy enough to play. Give me Tampa Bay.
Yeah, I'll take Tampa. I'll go with you. Hold your hand on this one. I'll lay the 4.5 points. Buccaneers on the road. A lot of dog games, and it's usually the case this time of year. New England Patriots at home hosting the New York Jets. The Patriots are 1.5-point home favorites. Is this the last game Bill Belichick is the head coach of the Patriots?
That's a great question. You talk about this weekend, but Monday, all the coaching changes. We probably expect Ron Rivera to be out. I don't know if we'll know Belichick's status by Monday, but probably within a week or so. I'll take Belichick in potentially this last game. I don't know if he's done for sure in New England. I think he's definitely going to be coaching next year somewhere. But to send them out on a high note, regardless, I will take the Pats.
All the reasons you just said is why I will take the Patriots to win this. I think they win it by more than a field goal. So I will lay the 1.5 there.
Does Saleh get fired after this game, do you think? Or do you think
I think there's too many. I think they like him. And I think, obviously losing your quarterback as early as they did. And but I mean, there have been some times on defense where you kind of wonder what the hell they're doing, Yeah,
but, I mean, they said he was coming back, but I don't know. We'll see.
But yeah, I'll take the Patriots later points there. New Orleans Saints at home hosting the Atlanta Falcons. The Saints, boy, that division's a mess once again, isn't it? The NFC South. Saints hosting the Falcons, favored by 3.
The Falcons are favored by 3, or the Saints? You said the Saints are favored by 3.
Saints at home, favored by 3.
I will take the Falcons in this one.
I will take the Saints, lay the 3 points in that. Tennessee Titans, a game that the Steelers fans will have interest in potentially here, hosting the Jacksonville Jaguars. I think it's still kind of up in the air about Trevor Lawrence at quarterback for the Jaguars. Even if he plays, he's not going to be 100%. Mike Vrabel got me wanting to run through a wall when I heard his press conference the other day. Titans at home giving up 3.5 points. The Jaguars are favored on the road by 3.5.
I believe Lawrence is considered questionable for this game. I gotta think he's gonna play, at least try to go, given how much this game means to him and to that organization. I will take Jacksonville in the hopes of the reverse psychology of the Kozora jinx that Tennessee finds a way to win. So I will take Jacksonville in the hopes of being wrong. Go forgive Joe Nedney because Pittsburgh needs Tennessee to come out on top in this one.
Look, I just want to beat you. That's all I'm concerned about here. So
I made a comeback this year.
Yeah, you have. Yeah, I think I had that one week where I went to just 3. I think we had opposite. I only had like 3 wins and you only had 3 losses. That was your comeback week a couple of weeks ago there. I think Vrabel's going to have this team ready, and with Lawrence, if they can get a good hit or two on Trevor Lawrence, I think the Titans win this one outright, Alex. So give me those 3.5 points there. Arizona Cardinals hosting the Seattle Seahawks. Cardinals have played beaten some teams, as of late here. But even so, the Seahawks on the road favored by 3 points over the Cardinals. Seahawks need this and need some help, don't they?
They need the game. I don't know their exact scenario, but I think after losing to Pittsburgh, there's going to be some help required in this one. Yeah, kudos to Jonathan Gannon and Murray and Arizona for taking down Philadelphia. I mean, they're skidding right now. But I will take Seattle. That offense just is too potent. I think Seattle's a pretty good team overall.
Yeah, I think they bounce back here. I think Geno played a good game against the Steelers. I think they'll be ready for this one. I'll take the Seahawks lay to 3 points on the road. Kansas City Chiefs on the road against the Los Angeles Chargers. The Chiefs obviously going to rest some guys in this game. Chargers 3.5 point home favorites.
Against the Chiefs? The Chiefs, I think they have nothing to play for in this game, right? They're locked into the 3 seed, I want to say. So Mahomes is sitting, I assume then, right? Easton Stick versus backup in Kansas City. I'll take the Chiefs just schematically. They find a way, but it doesn't really matter.
Yeah, I'll take the Chiefs I think the Chiefs win this one outright. So I'll take the 3.5 points in that. The Washington Commanders close out their season at home against the Dallas Cowboys. The Cowboys are favored by 13 in this one.
It's a big line. I will stick with the Cowboys, though.
I think the Cowboys win this. I think Washington covers. Give me those 13 points. The Raiders at home against the Denver Broncos, and the Raiders are 2.5 point home favorites to close out their season against the Broncos.
Yeah, Denver win would help Pittsburgh in a loss against Baltimore, so I will put my hopes in Denver and say they get the win.
I think the Raiders cover this at home. I'll lay the 2.5 points. New York Giants at home against the Eagles. The Eagles have, who are the Eagles right now? They are laying 5.5 points on the road against the Giants.
Yeah, there's a big Philadelphia freak out at the moment. I think they will at least right the ship for this final game. Give me Philadelphia.
I've been thinking they're going to bounce back for several weeks now. I think this is finally the week. I will lay the 5.5 points along with you. The 49ers at home against the Rams. Rams have been playing pretty decent as of late here for sure. The 49ers at home laying 4 points.
I'll go with the Rams in this one. Be a little different.
I'll go with the 49ers to win this one at home. I'll lay the 4 points here. Green Bay Packers at home against the Chicago Bears. The Packers are laying 3 points.
What are the playoff scenarios, if anything, for Green Bay in this one? I know Chicago is out. What does this game mean for Green Bay? I hadn't taken a look at their situation.
I'll have to look here real quick.
Are they out or are they? No, they're still in.
Yeah.
I think they need some help. They need some help. I'll go with Green Bay having just more motivation in this game.
Let's see here. Let me pull up where Green Bay is. Green Bay is currently the 7th seed, so they need to definitely win that to stay in the picture there. I'm with you. Green Bay needs this game more. I will take Green Bay lay to 3 points. All right, the last game on the 2023 regular season schedule, Miami Dolphins are hosting the Buffalo Bills. Dolphins are a pretty banged up team overall. The winner of this game wins the East, right?
Yes.
All right. And if Buffalo loses, they could actually go from having a chance from winning the division to not being in the playoffs. The Dolphins are at home. The Bills are favored by 2.5 points. The Steeler fans will potentially be rooting for depending on how the earlier games all go, hoping for a Dolphins win. Will they get it?
It's funny, Dave. Last year, you're rooting for the Dolphins to lose to the Jets, and then this year, you're going to be rooting for them to beat Buffalo. Yeah, Buffalo could be the 2 seed, or they could miss the playoffs. I mean, that's kind of the craziness. And although there's a path for Pittsburgh to get the 6 seed, I think if both Buffalo and Jacksonville loses, Pittsburgh wins, most likely Pittsburgh will be the 7. And right now, the only 2 teams that can be the 2 seed are the Bills and the Dolphins. So if Pittsburgh is the 7 seed, they're either going to be going to Buffalo or to Miami for a wild card weekend. Just a kind of a quick heads up there. A long-winded way to get to my prediction, which will be Buffalo gets the win.
You know what? I think the explosive play aspect of Miami, I think this ought to be a fun game to watch. I'll tell you that. I will take Miami to win this one outright. So give me the 2.5 points here. That circles us all the way back to the first game of Week 18. The Baltimore Ravens hosting the Pittsburgh Steelers. The Steelers are 3-point road favorites in this one. What say you?
Yeah, I just know with Baltimore resting all their guys, I still expect this to be close because it's Steelers-Ravens. It's almost always close, and you kind of throw some of the records and personnel things out. And I do think, Baltimore still has talent and great coaching, but all of that is to say that I think Pittsburgh will have success running the ball with the way this offense has found a spark, and just defensively, that front 7 should be able to handle, especially Baltimore is going to be sitting up to 3 or 4 of their starting offensive linemen in this game. That's going to be enough for Pittsburgh's front, Hayward, Watt, etc., to make some play. So I got Pittsburgh winning this one 24-20.
Okay, I don't have it as close, but I do have the Steelers winning in this one. I expect the Steelers to come out ready to play this one here for sure. Obviously, the advantage with who's sitting with the Ravens there. I think the Ravens will still have some success on offense overall, probably punch it in a couple of times. I think the Steelers pull away a little bit in the second half here, maybe with a late field goal to punctuate things. The number 5 has been in my head all week when it comes to a Steelers point margin win. I expect them to win by 5, then trying to figure out the score from there. 22-17.
How does Pittsburgh get to 22? You always love the funky numbers and those 20s high teams.
I don't know. A safety? How about a safety in this one?
Another Killebrew punt block, perhaps?
Something like that. I love those weird scores. I love those. I look, shame, plain and simple, shame on the Steelers if they don't win this game.
Yeah, it's set up perfectly for them. They're going to be playing against Baltimore's backups in this one. Pittsburgh, they need this game, and they don't need it. It's not an elimination, but they really, of course, would rather win it than lose it. They're playing good ball right now. If they don't make this one, they don't deserve the help that they could still get to get into the postseason.
Agreed.
All right, so those are our selections. We'll be back on Monday to talk about this game, whatever happens on Saturday, and once the dust settles from the playoff picture on Sunday. Let's get to a couple of reader emails, Dave, to close out today's show.
All right, let's see here from Chris Cordova. What do you guys make of the excuse Tomlin gave about why it took so long to give Mason a chance? It seems like Tomlin always talks about not living in his fears or scared money, but it seems that nothing ever changes until this team has nothing to lose and their backs against a wall. It seems like this is when Tomlin steps out of his comfort zone and loses a conservative mid-set. The aggressive mindset. He misspelled it here. This aggressive approach we are seeing now is what I would like to see in 2024 from the start. I mean, it almost seems like everything Tomlin says they are doing, living in the fears, scared money, etc., is what they actually are doing. Well, at least until the last 2 weeks. Thanks, guys. Happy New Year from Chris. Look, Mitch forced that decision. Mitch Trubisky forced that decision. And because of what they're paying, I think Merrill Hodge made a great point on the radio yesterday or day before about the reason Mitch was number 2 is because of what they were paying him. And it's hard to argue with that. Should it be that way? It boils down to this: Mitch was playing lousy, and I wrote about it before. After Kenny went down, that those next two games were going to be very crucial. Obviously not only to the Steelers, but crucial to what Mitch Trubisky's future would be with this team past 2023. And he did not, he did not play well, and he left Tomlin Tomlin had no choice but to go to Mason, So
right.
Had Mitch just played mid without those turnovers, would Mitch have remained the quarterback? We'll never know. But the fact that he was turning that football over is what cost Mitch Trubisky, plain and simple there. So, getting into the living in your fears. Look, they signed, and I wrote about this as well too. The reason they signed and gave Mitch the money that they gave him is because when they got into situations, God forbid, that they needed their backup quarterback to come in, they expect him more times than not to produce some results and get a couple of wins in there. He did not do that. That forced the hand, and that's why it took so long to get to Mason. So you could make the argument that he should have pulled Mitch maybe earlier in that game against the Colts.
Well, there's a Patriots game at halftime. I think when the conversation first began.
Okay. So do you want to say, it was a full game too late? Yeah, I could go with that. But I mean, this team was going to roll with Mitch as their backup quarterback until he gave them enough reason not to.
You're right, which is what happened, and your post ended up being on the money in terms of what.
Well, I wasn't. Yeah, I mean, it was more.
But it was open-ended, but it was determining his future, good or bad.
Right. I'm not going to try to pat myself on the back and say that I predicted him not,
sure,
to crap the bed, But I think it was pretty clear and evident. I mean, you're looking ahead at his contract past this season. It was a big couple of games for him.
Yeah, you weren't saying he was going to fail. You just said it's going to determine his future. If he goes out there and excels, okay, then he's locked in. He's going to be your number 2 next year and for the future. If he struggles, then we're talking about moving on. You left it open-ended, but you were right. It carried a ton of weight and obviously went in the wrong direction for Trubisky. In terms of why he didn't play, listen, I think Rudolph should have at least started against the Colts. I think Tomlin made at least a 1 week too long mistake to make the switch there. And you're right, he played him because he had to. He had no other choice by the time that Bengals game rolled around. But I think the 3 reasons are, the money, obviously you're getting paid that kind of money to be the backup. We're going to play you. B, Tomlin did not have confidence in Rudolph because he hadn't played in so long. He didn't know what he were going to get from him. And so I think that was something basically Tomlin had said as well. Just really didn't know what kind of rust he had not playing since 2021. And then I think maybe a smaller point, Tomlin didn't want to seem so flighty on who his quarterback was, of the way the Vikings are going through quarterbacks each week and just kind of going to a different guy. I think Tomlin wanted to have the illusion of stability, even though it hurt them more than it helped. Okay, I'm not going to just start jumping from quarterback to quarterback week to week. I think he wanted to try to see things through. That's some of that loyalty and stubbornness that can be an asset and a fault, more of a fault in this case. But I think that played a role in why he wanted to try to give Trubisky every opportunity until he just had no choice but to turn to Mason Rudolph.
Agreed. All right, Danny Porter, and this one, I think we talked a lot about this in the other show on Wednesday. Dave and Alex, based on his performance, Nick Herbig definitely deserves more snaps. Why do you think the Steelers have not used him in sub package like they did when Dupree, Watt, and Ingram were playing? I think it would be a great option on 3rd and long downs and get him on the field more. Look, we talked about this a lot the other day. We have had a couple of questions about it. You got to get in more of those obvious passing down situations. And I look, they want him to concentrate on being an edge. And I think that was very evident out of his shoot with him. Now, can you get him on the field as an edge guy and then take a guy like either Highsmith or Watt to move him around to get a favorable matchup? Sure, you could potentially do that. But, the core is the main issue is here is trying to figure out how to get Herbig on the field with more snaps. Now, could they potentially do that? Well, somebody's got to come off the field in certain situations. And once again, I think you're only going to do that more in second and third and long situations. So that limits the amount of times you're probably going to do it anyway. I mean, nobody understands the talk about Nick Herbig getting more on the field than us. And I know there's a lot of calls for him to play inside linebacker. I don't even think inside linebacker is on the table for him right now. I think, as we talked about the other day, the talk will and should be, how do we maybe get Nick Herbig on the field as along with Watt and Highsmith, maybe a little more in 2024?
Right. And some of that may include off-ball linebacker, but it's not going to happen right now mid-season, just asking too much out of rookie. If I remember correctly, some of those 3 outside linebacker packages, they were less sub-package, unless you're just kind of referring to anything other than their base 3-4 sub, but it was more like early down type stuff where they were really had 3 down linemen and they just would sub out an inside backer for an outside linebacker or a safety or something like that. It was less so third and long kind of packages where they would employ. Maybe they did some of that. I'd have to go back and check my charting.
They probably didn't as much, but it seems to stick in my head that it did happen.
Yeah. I am surprised they haven't at least explored some of that stuff, even in early down situations of 3 outside linebackers, especially given all the inside linebacker injuries. You would think they would try to mess with that a little bit. So that is maybe a bit surprising overall. But listen, when you're playing behind, Watt and Highsmith, your snaps are going to be limited. There's no question about that. I do think in the Colts and the Bengals game, they were rotating much better. I mean, Herbig and Golden were playing double-digit snaps. When the Seattle game, Seattle barely had the football. They ran 49 plays. There really weren't many chances to rotate and sub guys out. So I'm good with that. But we'll see. It'll be a topic of conversation in the offseason. And if Golden does leave in the offseason, then Herbig probably becomes the clear number 3 at both spots, and his snap count's going to go up based off of that alone.
Yeah, absolutely. So, I mean, that's obviously a conversation. We're going to keep, the questions are still going to come up about that, and we'll see what happens with Golden. And look, in a game like this against Baltimore, how many snaps will Herbig play in this one? I don't know. Probably ceiling, barring somebody gets hurt, 6 or 7, I would think.
Yeah, that sounds right.
Let's see where to go to from here in the email machine. Brett Nile, Mason Rudolph's recent performance has generated a lot of questions, but I'm wondering if it has also generated at least one answer. Can we now definitely say that signing Trubisky was a mistake? I don't think either of you were on board with the signing originally, and to me it's now obvious that it was probably a panic move. At best, it was a misevaluation. In the end, you would have been better to just keep Rudolph as your starter going into the offseason, signed a Josh Dobbs type, drafted a quarterback, in this case Pickett, and use that money, Trubisky's contract, to plug a hole somewhere else, say safety. Thoughts on that? Look, I mean, neither one of us were throwing a parade on the Mitch Trubisky signing. It was understandable from the standpoint of where the franchise was at the time. I remember scoffing a lot about the talk about Mitch. Remember all the reports, Mitch Trubisky worth $22 million, and me scoffing at that, saying, no way, this is a guy that played 33 snaps the season before for the Bills and all like that. I mean, yeah, his contract had incentives,
right.
some incentives in there, but at its base value, it wasn't a killer at core value when it came to that. And the big thing, and it was a thing that I kind of wondered going this past offseason, was, did he even play well enough? I mean, you could have made a good argument, and I think I did to some degree, that because of his contract, you could have seen Mitch out the door last year. Now, what they ended up doing, and make no mistake about it, we talked about this as well, was they forced him into that extension to lower his cap number. He didn't receive any new money in regards to that. So basically, they paid him his 2023 money, most of it in form of a signing bonus. to help low, and then just tacked on 2 extra years. But it was up to him to earn those 2 additional years, meaning 2024 and 2025. And at this point, he has not at this point. So it's easy to sit here after the fact. From what we've seen specifically from Trubisky at this point of this year, and say, man, what a horrible decision. They should have just paid Mason a little bit more than minimum and brought him back specifically this offseason and been done with it here. But, it's easy to look at this point of this season now and say, man, what a god-awful decision it was to sign Trubisky initially.
Yeah, I mean, it was always meant to be short term, and I imagine that was Pittsburgh's plan, considering they drafted Kenny Pickett, a month and a half after signing Trubisky. I was not a fan of the signing initially. I wanted other veteran free agent quarterbacks, Jacoby Brissett, Teddy Bridgewater.
Brissett, yeah.
Yeah, I think Bridgewater higher, but I think Brissett had to fit with Canada, and both would have been better. Ultimately, as you said, it is what it is. Not going to go over spilt milk too much. The more important question is, who's the quarterback of the future for the Pittsburgh Steelers? Who's their starting quarterback? And that is still unclear, and that is more concerning and more of a discussion point than Trubisky. But yeah, I think they just, I don't know. I like Trubisky, good guy, just not a good fit for this offense. But they have to be too reckless, too over aggressive, and does not mesh well with how this team is built to win right now. Maybe some other teams where you have to score shootouts, your defense isn't as good, you have better weapons. Trubisky might work, not going to work in Pittsburgh.
From Brandon on Kenny Pickett. I respect Jerry Dulac, but I'm not there to rubber stamp Kenny Pickett as the starter and Mason Rudolph as the backup for next year. I find such 2024 options as Russell Wilson is ridiculous. First, let the team get through week 18, and if there's more ahead, so be it. However, this benching doesn't speak well for Kenny Pickett's future in Pittsburgh, whether Mason comes back or not, and a couple of new faces are in the quarterback room. They simply cannot hand him the starting spot. Sign/draft a legitimate option. If Kenny loses at that time, so be it. But for today, he's not starting, and that's a very bad sign. Brandon writes here. Look, Jerry Dulac, in so many words, is pretty much. What did he say specifically about Rudolph and Pickett?
He said Rudolph will come back, or at least Pittsburgh wants to bring Rudolph back as the number 2, and that Pickett will be the quarterback to start 2024.
Look, we're going to write and talk about it a ton with the Russell Wilson, Kirk Cousins,
Justin Fields.
Who else is going to get thrown into that mix?
I mean, the draft prospects, obviously,
right?
That we talked about.
From where I sit right here today, other than us writing and talking about it, I don't see any of those things happening. Now, maybe a quarterback gets drafted at some point here, but other than that, it's going to take a lot in the next several months to get me to this point where I think the Steelers would go out and do something with a Russell Wilson or a Cousins, or or trading for a Fields or something like that. I just don't see it, and I can't help but go back, and people are going to I might get it tattooed on me anyway, because I brought it up so much, even dating back to early this season. Mike Tomlin's comments on Kenny Pickett and football justice just have me thinking that they're going to try it again with him, at least to start off the 2024 season.
But was benching Kenny Pickett for Mason Rudolph in week 18 Mike Tomlin's thought when he said football justice?
Yeah, I look, he's got four. He has no choice to be in the with the decision that he's made right now.
Sure. I'm just saying a lot has changed since Tomlin made those comments. Listen, I don't know what's going to happen. As you said, Dave, we're going to spend literally the next 5 months talking about the same conversation over and over again. So not looking forward to that in particular. I will say to the idea, and maybe it does happen, but the idea that Rudolph gets signed to be the clear backup to Pickett, talk about an awkward situation. The first moment Pickett stumbles, there's going to be immediate calls to replace him with Rudolph. So how do you sign Rudolph to probably some decent money at the least to be the backup to Pickett? A, would Rudolph want that? And B, I mean, you're setting yourself up for at some point having those calls to make a change internally, externally be really loud. So I don't know. It feels like being best friends with your ex while dating your current girlfriend and all living together. And it just feels like, yeah, maybe it could work, but it's going to be really awkward to make it work.
Yeah, then there's the money aspect of it, especially if Mason goes out and wins this game and against the Ravens and ends on a high note. And regardless of the Steelers getting the playoffs or not, his resume is going to look a lot better going into this offseason. There's going to be a lot of once again, like you said, if you end up re-signing him for more than $5 million, you're probably doing so with the idea that he's going to be the starting quarterback.
I mean, you could backups get paid decently now at this point, but I mean, even if Rudolph is the clear backup to start the year, the first interception Kenny Pickett throws, the first loss Pittsburgh has, that pressure is always going to be on to make a change. And how do you deal with that? Is that even good and healthy for Pickett and for the organization? I don't know. It gives me some pause. Again, I've not thought about it in depth because I'm focused on the here and now. There's a whole offseason for us to discuss all those things, and we will. But I can see where that conversation is going to go if that Dulac scenario plays out.
You're in the same boat with me. You would find it very surprising if a guy like Wilson or Cousins or Justin Fields is from where we sit right now in Pittsburgh in 2024.
Probably, I would say I'm less strongly surprised by it than you. Again, I had not spent I want to see how Rudolph finishes the year. Like, that's going to be part of the conversation. What if, just hypothetically, like Rudolph gets you to the AFC title game and something like that happens? I mean, this conversation can still, shift in a lot of ways. Wilson, no, I don't think that's going to happen. Fields, as you kind of laid out, contractually would be tougher to do, but he'll be on the block, so we'll see. I could see a Cousins. I mean, I don't know. I'm more open to it than you probably, but still, I guess as of this moment, I'm still going to make the assumption Kenny Pickett will be the starter week 1 of 2024. But
yeah, and that was going to be my next question. If you had to hedge right now of who would be the week 1 2024 starter for the Steelers, you would think most of the money would be on Pickett, right?
I think so, but I might be a little less certain than you are, and certainly less certain than Jerry Dulac seems to be right now.
I just can't get away from Mike Tomlin and that football justice. Now, a lot of things have obviously changed since all that.
But how do you go back to Pickett next year? Let's say Rudolph is re-signed. How do you go back to Pickett when you've benched the guy for Rudolph? And if Rudolph plays well in this game, and let's say they don't get the hope they need, and that's just how the season ends, how do you justify that as if you're Mike Tomlin?
Look, from what we've seen right now, unless Pickett gets into any of these games and blows the doors out, there's no way that you can go into next season saying, you know what, we can guarantee Kenny Pickett's going to be the starter for this team for 17 games. So what does that mean? It means you damn sure better do a better job of having somebody you think can come in and win some games. And who is that guy right now? We both expect Mitch to be gone. And if he's not somebody I think can win you some games at this point.
Right.
Mason, what's his market going to be? And would he come back for X amount to not be guaranteed a job?
Right. Could he go try to compete somewhere for some team that has nothing a quarterback? Potentially, if he plays well against the Ravens, then that seems to be an option, a possibility.
And look, it goes back to what we've said here in these last recent couple of shows. There's a lot of uncertainty with the Steelers and the quarterback room moving past this season as we sit here today.
Yeah, and that's why I'm hedging as much as I am, because A, I'm focused on the here and now, and B, it's as muddied as ever in their quarterback situation right now. So I think it's hard to give any vote of confidence to anything as we sit here today.
Right. Let's see here if I got one more. What constitutes a sack? Alex, as always, thanks for all you do. You're the best in the biz. I have a question and comment today. I'll start with the question. When a team runs a play with a direct snap to the running back or any player other than the quarterback, and that player is stopped behind the line of scrimmage, is that considered a sack? No. First, that's an easy question to answer right away. When Seattle ran such a play and bobbled the snap, it got me thinking that would what would that tackle be called? And if it's not considered a sack, can you surmise why not? It doesn't seem like you should discriminate between the two positions, as they both directly receive the ball from center, and a running back is free to run, hand off, or throw the ball just as a quarterback is. And if a sack is limited to the quarterback position, if a running back receives the ball directly and then hands off to the quarterback, he's stopped behind the line. Would that be a sack? It doesn't seem like it should be. Anyways, thanks. This is a curiosity itch that I've had since the game, and a Google search hasn't done me much good. I thought you guys could shine some light on it. Look, you have seen it's all about intent of the play.
Mm-hmm. Right. No, that's 100% what it is. A wildcat run is different than a quarterback, even though they both receive the ball initially. The intent is, are the receivers running routes? Are the linemen getting downfield? If they are, then it's declaring kind of a run play. Are they pass setting or run setting? So those are how those things are scored. And there's also the aborted snap stuff that happened against Baltimore in Watt's 22.5 sack season that doesn't go down as a sack. It goes down as an aborted snap kind of fumble situation. Although, I mean, if it is like, say, a trick play and a running back tries to pass, if he gets tackled,
that's a sack.
That is a sack, right? Okay.
Right.
But
if you look, there have been, and there are every year, sacks on running backs and wide receivers,
Right. But you said the key word, Dave, intent. What is the intent of the play? Is it a pass or a run? That's how you determine a sack or not.
Right. And if there's any question about intent, I would think on a play, I don't know this for sure, I think you would default to run, basically, and like obviously any abort situation. I guess there could be some gray area on aborted snap type situations, but even so, those are generally described as aborted snaps. And
that happened to Watt against Huntley in 2021. It was the aborted snap, and Watt, we thought it was a sack, and they called it an aborted snap fumble.
Right. So, Dan, that's a good question. I know there are probably people out there sitting out there wondering about that. But I think at its core, you boil it down to what was the original intent of the play. Now, if you have one of those trick plays where it's either a double pass or the wide receiver gets the ball or the running back gets the ball and goes over to the side of the field, and then pressure. He tries to scramble with the football. I think still the intent there was that to be a pass play. So if he does not make it past the line of scrimmage, it would be a sack in that instance. So I think you look at plays like that. Was there a clear and obvious intent on the play to be run past, and then you score it off of that?
Right. Yeah. Good point there. Just kind of popped in my head. We should have mentioned it earlier. We're kind of squeezing this in late, but the referee, we mentioned the referee in this game.
Yeah. We mentioned it. Yeah.
We did that last show. Okay. Yeah. Brad Allen calling this game. Probably much ado about nothing. Probably will be called fine, but noting that again for this game.
All right, real quick, one more from we'll get to one part of Bryce here. For this rematch, if you're Terrell Austin, who does Joey Porter Jr. follow? Beckham if he plays, or Zay Flowers if he plays, and why? Look, for first and foremost, I'll be surprised if isn't Flowers the doubtful one?
Yes, Flowers is doubtful.
And Beckham
out.
He's out, right?
He's out. Yes, probably for rest, but yeah, he's not
right.
going to play.
And as we talked earlier in the show here, I don't know if you get so. I mean, there are probably maybe an instance or two where Joey Porter Jr. would travel, but Bryce, I think you're going to see a lot of zone in this from the Steelers personally.
Yeah, I mean, I think Bateman's talented.
I mean, you could switch sides with your corners and play the zone that way, obviously, but I don't think you're going to be so intent on. Unless the few man situations, if there's one guy that you would have that you concern yourself with Joey Porter Jr. following, right?
Yeah, maybe some formational stuff. I don't know. Probably less traveling than Jamar Chase, Amari Cooper, Hopkins, those types of things. Maybe some 3-by-1 looks. You may have Porter take the backside X receiver, lock him up, and kind of hopefully take that side of the field away and zone up the trip side. Maybe more formational than it may be personnel. So we'll see. But yeah, I imagine much less true traveling than past games.
His other question here real quick is about style of play. Could Chandon Sullivan be a candidate to play more safety next year if the Steelers find a better cover corner to play nickel? Now, I think you see Chandon Sullivan, what he does and does best right now. And he's had a nice couple of games as of late on top of it. It would, if you get to the point where you're talking about Chandon Sullivan playing Sullivan, playing safety, you could go other directions.
Yeah, that's not going to happen. He's a slot corner, so not going to be an option.
All right. Anything else we want to get to, Alex? Any late breaking news coming in or anything?
I do. Two things, not sports related, but I'll squeeze in some random stuff. Reportedly, and I say this mostly with my tongue in cheek, 9-foot alien spotted in Miami. So I'm going to be going down that rabbit hole immediately after this episode is concluding. And then some sad news here probably means a little bit more to you and the older generation. Actor David Soul, who played Hutch in Starsky
and Hutch. I saw that this morning.
Passed away at the age of 80, which is some very sad news there. Were you a fan of? It feels like your kind of show growing up, Dave.
I wasn't growing up. I wasn't a huge. I mean, I obviously remember the show Starsky and Hutch growing up, but I wasn't. I just remember that red Gran Torino mostly in that, and I remember people always making fun the way they would always kind of run to the car and do that slide over the hood to get into we got to get in the car as fast as we can, and the quickest way is for me to get to the passenger side by sliding on the hood. I kind of remember that, I think, as something related to Starsky and Hutch, but I wasn't a huge Starsky and Hutch fan. No.
All right. Well, go find out about these 9-foot aliens, Dave. We're gonna do some research and come back very strongly on Monday and figure this thing out. Me and you.
I guess the biggest thing to take away from that with David Soul is, man, I've gotten old, because he was like 80, right?
He was 80 years old. Yes.
All right. So, man. Time gets away from you there. All right. We watched a little bit of Die Hard was on last night when we were laying in bed there.
The first one?
The first one. The scene there where Hans Booby, where
I'm your white knight.
Yeah, that scene, and probably the 10 minutes before that scene, and the 10 minutes after, where he drops the C4 down the shaft, the elevator shaft, and all like that. So I thought about you last night, and I didn't sleep very well last night, but I thought about you last night by watching that segment of that movie, which is not a Christmas movie.
It is a Christmas movie, but good old Nakatomi Plaza. We'll finish it tonight, and then we'll talk about it more. We'll talk about that. And you're ignoring the aliens, Dave. There's 9-foot aliens walking around Miami. Come on, we got to talk about this.
You could have some good conversation with my wife, because living out here in Las Vegas as well too. I don't discount that there's other life out there. I don't.
Yeah, well, of course there is. And the mass use, are they here is the question. Are they walking among us?
If they're not walking among us, I think they've been here before.
Ooh. Okay.
I and my wife really thinks they're here, have been here and potentially among us in the air now. So you could have some good conversations with her on that. All right. Enough of the X-Files here with Steelers Depot. We'll let you know that we will be back on Monday. Who knows what we're going to be talking about there? Maybe we'll be talking about the Steelers in the playoffs. Maybe we're already get the offseason underway there. In the meantime, you can follow me on Twitter at Steelers Depot. Follow Alex at Alex_Kozora. Follow the show at Terrible Podcast. Email the show, theterriblepodcast@gmail.com. If you like what we do and want to donate to the cause, SteelersDepot.com. Hit the donate button up right navigational bar. Also, if you like an ad-free version of the site, SteelersDepot.com. Hit the ad-free button up right navigational bar. Until Monday, as always, thanks for listening to the Terrible Podcast with Dave and Alex.